All right, hi everyone. I'm Brian Henson.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Can I start out with a question, since we're all here now? I am a huge Terry Pratchett fan. I'm thrilled to hear about the We Free Men.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the We Free Men?
This is where I need help from Nicole. No.
Well, okay, can you tell us why you wanted to do it?
Well, I've always loved the book since he first wrote it, and initially Sam Raimi optioned it, and there was a period there where I was hoping maybe we could do it. So then we got together with Terry's company, I think about a year and a half ago, probably, and we said to them we'd love to work with you on We Free Men, and we feel like it's a uniquely great book. And so yeah, we're developing the script is where we're at right now, and it'll take a while because Terry's writing is his tone is quite unique, and to try to capture that when you no longer have the prose to work with is tricky. So it'll take us a while to get it right, but we're very excited about it.
Great, thank you. I'll keep going. Do other people have questions? You were talking in your panel about the different shoulder heights and the bouncing shoulders and all this different stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like puppetry has a lot of unique challenges to it, and also a lot of really interesting bits that we might not know about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, some shows, like we have our show Puppet Up. That's the improv puppet show that's on stage, but it's to a camera, and some people will have seen it. It's toured around all over. It's now in Vegas. It's in the Venetian Hotel in Vegas, and I would recommend anybody see it. But a show like that, all the puppets are built to be basically pretty lightweight and pretty easy to operate. Now I have your flow. Pretty easy to.
They like us both.
The trick is to try to build them soft and as lightweight as possible so that you can hold them up and work them longer. Sesame Street characters are much the same, and Muppet Show characters are much the same, where you have to do a lot of shooting every day. But when we do things like Dark Crystal and these bigger movies, or my God, Little Shop of Horrors, when I did Little Shop of Horrors, I did Feed Me, the Feed Me plant, and it was in front of me, and it was about 170 pounds, and it had counterweights and all, but boy, was that hard work. And so once we started doing animatronics with Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, and then the other films that we all various worked on, yeah, it started at one point. Let's see, for Little Shop of Horrors, we had the Manchester United trainer who had to work on. There was two of us puppeteers who were in the heavy positions, who were in the lead positions, and we would come in every morning almost on crutches. We had bursitis up from all 10 fingertips all the way to here on both sides. But these Manchester United trainers, they would work on you for an hour and you'd be like, oh, now I'm perfectly fine. You would do the work for the day, and then you go to sleep, and in the morning you'd wake up and go, oh, I'm paralyzed now.
Oh.
But yeah, so some of them are some of them are very physically demanding. But particularly in those big movie characters, when it's Muppets or Sesame Street, we try to keep them light so that you can keep working all day long.
So,
yeah, when you're looking at technology today versus technology when you were doing Pilot for Farscape,
right.
If you were to have to rebuild Pilot from the ground up right now, do you think that the technology in the past 15 years or whatever do you think you'd be able to do it in a much better manner based on the current technology standards, or is it pretty much the same for large characters like that?
Well, I think what's happening now, which is interesting, is there is kind of this love and return to animatronics that we're sort of seeing, and with like Creature Shop Challenge, that show that I did. People love seeing all animatronic, and when we were first doing animatronics, I think we were trying to make as perfect an illusion as we possibly could. And it's quite interesting because now looking back at it, it's a very imperfect illusion, whereas 3D animation can create a perfect illusion, but there's something wonderful about the imperfect illusion. So it's quite interesting now to reapproach animatronics almost as if it's puppetry, almost as if it's hand puppetry. Like when we do the Muppets or something like that, there's no perfection to the illusion at all. It is an abstract illusion. They are puppets. If you pull their arms off, there will be fluff in there, not blood. And it's quite interesting because now I'm developing animatronic productions that will probably be entirely practical, but where we're now happy that everybody is happy and in agreement. We know they're not real. They are animatronic puppets, and that's part of the fun. And yeah, the eyes will be a little bit weird. So there's that. Some of the stuff we're developing, we will still be all practical, and they'll be great, but we'll be no longer trying to chase the target of the perfect illusion of life. Farscape, if we're doing Farscape again, which we're working towards doing that, you will see more of what we're calling hybrid animatronics, which is a lot of what they're doing with Star Wars as well. That's where basically you don't do with animatronics what animatronics does badly, and you don't do with digital effects what digital effects does badly. So digital effects isn't going to be good at playing a two-hander scene with an actor who has to look at a ball. So have the actor play a two-hander scene with an animatronic character. That's much better. But when you are trying to make your eye lines perfect and the pupils looking in exactly the right place and you're trying to make the lip shapes perfect, digital animation is going to do that better. Animatronics is never going to get there. So I think what we'll see now is a lot more hybrid where the animatronics will deliberately stop at a certain point. You know, the mouth will just go bop, 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 bop. The lip sync will be put in digitally. You know, the eyes may be just with a fixed pupil on a blue field so that the eyes will be done digitally. I think that's what you'll see now. And we've been waiting for it, kind of waiting for it for years, knowing that that's where it's going, is in this sort of hybrid direction, which also should be the most cost effective. It's very hard for studios and television executives to get their heads around it because they don't like both. They want one or the other. They want, is it a lot of pre-production and then when you shoot you deliver? Or is it a lot of post-production where you're going to shoot tomorrow and then you're going to do post-production forever and then deliver? And then as soon as it's a hybrid, it's a little tricky because it means you're doing a lot of prep and you're doing a lot of post, which makes all those executive types a little bit uncomfortable. But that's where we're coming into. So.
Speaking of Farscape, can you maybe talk a little bit about what stage you might be at for there being more Farscape, or if there's any impediments so far to making more Farscape?
Impediments? Well, it's always hard to make anything. No, there have not been impediments. We just have a very, very high bar. So we are working and working and working on it. But we are still working towards the same goal that I've been saying. I want to do the movie, and the movie is what we're developing. But we're not slated for production yet, because we're still working on the script.
Do you think Peacekeeper Wars will see a Blu-ray American release? Because right now you can only get it on DVD, or you import it from Australia, which you have to have a region specific.
But it's not Blu-ray still from Australia. Yeah.
Even the season DVDs aren't Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, no, they
season
have.
DVDs.
Yeah. No, we did.
Blu-ray.
We did. Well, the problem is there is a little bit of a problem. It's a slightly sad story. No, not really. We finished the show on 625. We didn't finish the show 1080i, and nobody was really back then. I mean, maybe some of the network shows were doing that. Some network shows were holding the film, and we held the film for a while because we shot on film, but then we posted on 625 video, which is much better than American 525 video. It's the British PAL format, so it's much better. So we then up-resed the 4 seasons to high def, and there's all different ways of up-resing from low-res to high-res, and it's really interesting. I just did for Fraggle Rock, which is particularly tough because the colors are so bright and the contrast ratios are so high. I did a test with like 5 or 6 of the top companies. The result was all over the place. It's unbelievable. If you can find the right technique for up-resing your production, which we have now found for Farscape, we now found it for Fraggle Rock, we're looking for it for Storyteller. That's the hardest one because of the way we produced it. But there's people now doing really beautiful up-reses. So, but with specifically Peacekeeper Wars, yes. I have that conversation with our head of distribution. We were not distributing it originally. We distributed the Four Seasons, and then Hallmark distributed Peacekeeper Wars, and then we have taken back distribution of Peacekeeper Wars. But it's very expensive to up-res it, just that once. But we are working towards it, and my guess is we'll do it within the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm selecting? Okay.
Or you could select.
Okay. Oh, were you selecting? Oh, okay.
But you could select.
I did. Well, I pointed here. So.
I was just gonna ask, because I think you were the judge for the Labyrinth Masquerade Ball.
Yeah, did I get it wrong?
I wanna make sure I had my facts
With
right.
Creature Shop Challenge, I got so much email that Melissa should have won.
I wasn't able to attend. I tried to get tickets and they sold out in about 5 minutes.
I know, they sold out in 2 minutes.
But with the Labyrinth fandom and how, you know, people are still so excited about that film and there's such love for it, does that surprise you? And what was your perspective of the event for those of us who couldn't attend?
It was lovely. I'm sorry we couldn't attend. And the costumes were extraordinary. The costumes that people made were really fantastic. I think they're going to try to figure out how to make it bigger. But they were at capacity for the center. It was a really lovely event, and this is, you know, us basically supporting and sponsoring something that fans have been doing. You know, fans have been doing with masquerade balls before, and they used to ask us for permission, and we used to say, "Oh, I'm not." Shh. Yeah, Brian, shut up. God, strike that. So now we are sponsoring, yeah. So it's lovely, and it's lovely for me because Labyrinth for me was like an entire life. I had an entire life on Labyrinth, I feel like. It was a really long, it was those days when you shot for a long time, which is like Star Wars right now is doing it the old-fashioned way. They're shooting a long time, and there's nothing for creative people that is so great. To be able to work with one creative team for a year is so much nicer than popping in for 10 days here, doing 2 days over here, which is the way most of the industry works now. So for me, it was like a whole lifetime. And so going to the Masquerade Ball, it's like going back into that life. And I feel like I had a whole, and it was a very important film to me. It was probably my 3rd project out of school. And I had a lot of responsibility and was working for my father with a lot of responsibility. The other 2 films were not for my father. So it resonates for me in many different ways. It was a really exciting time for me in my relationship with my dad. I grew tremendously. I went in as like a special effectsy kind of guy and then came out as much more of a mature performer and coordinator and then went on to directing not long after. But also, I wish Jennifer Connelly was here. I wish David was still here. You know, it's just it was a lovely time in my life and very unique and impossible to ever go back. But boy, going to that Masquerade Ball is pretty close.
There was questions back there. Yeah.
Similar to that, I think with Labyrinth and then looking at We Free People and how
We Free Men.
We Free Men. I keep saying We Free People. It's not surprising, it seems to me, that you guys would take on a Terry Pratchett because both of this Labyrinth and Dark Crystal all have this kind of interest in modern or contemporary myth, and that seems to be the direction that Henson Films has always gone. And so creating sort of a spirituality in those universes. So I'm curious, what does that mean for you, your own spirituality, and how that helps you choose the projects or affected or influenced your own work as an artist and creator?
I don't know. It's a good question. Yes, that's what I respond to, or I want it to be comedic and I want it to point out the absurdities of life, and I want to leave an audience buoyant and not heavy because of their life, but buoyant and laughing at their lives. That's the other side of probably the Henson Company and me. Personally, I'll respond to that. So that's sort of the lighter side. And then when it's a story or something, absolutely, I am attracted to a deeper mythology and a deeper spiritual resonance. And that is a good thing, and that is a hard thing, because in our business you get to make 1 out of 4 things that you really wanted to make, and the 3 out of 4 that you didn't make can kill you. You know, it can really be hard if it's these, because you put so much of your heart and effort into something that you really know should be made, and it resonates deeply and spiritually, and then you just can't make it. so that's hard. But yes, you know, I mean, what you're saying is exactly what. There's always a bit of it's spirituality. There's also, we try to see a message. It also just makes it worthwhile. It's much better to have made something and feel like I made something that's important, as well as funny, as well as imaginative, as well as artistically beautiful. It's nice to feel that that there was importance in there to you, and then hopefully to the world. I mean, it was, my dad would always say, try to leave the world a little bit better off by you having been here, and that's certainly the way we approach most everything. But sometimes leaving the world a little better off is teach people to laugh at themselves. Sometimes that's all it does.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the Muppets and their many interactions with pop culture icons. They've crossed paths with wrestlers in particular a few times, including a live WWE event here in Atlanta just a few years ago where they were there live to promote the Muppet movie. Why do you think those interactions work so well? And do you know if there are going to be any more of them? And are there any particular challenges for a live event like that on TV?
There's a lot of challenges. First of all, the Muppets are managed by Disney, and I consult. I consult when they need me to, so I can't comment too deeply. But I will say the whole idea of getting the Muppets out there is because they can, largely, because they have a fun point of view on life, and they have a fun life perspective, I guess, the Muppets, and put in the right situation in a live appearance can work very well. But it is a little dangerous, because even the Muppets have had live appearances that sort of sit a little flat. They tend to sit less flat the more extreme the person is. So the more normal the person is, the harder it's going to be for the Muppets to interact in a sparky way, because the Muppets are not very normal. So you start interacting with wrestlers, or you start interacting with unusual musical artists or weird performance artists, and it'll tend to work a little better.
If you don't mind just talking about Muppet Treasure Island for a second, that is
Sure.
one of my faves.
Oh, thank you. What would you like me to say about it?
I've got a better question. How is it like on the production when you're working on classic work that you're adapting? You're trying to make something from it, but you know you're going to put a lot of Muppets in there. How's it?
Well, let's see. The two movies were similar, and Christmas Carol and then Treasure Island. But in actual execution, by the time you're making something, it gets so big that it starts feeling quite different. Christmas Carol followed a pretty simple formula. Jerry Jewell wrote it, and it started as a suggestion actually from my agent, who said, "You should make Christmas Carol." And I was like, "That's been the most overproduced story ever." And he said, "Yeah, but it's great, and it's perfect for the Muppets." I was like, "God, it's not perfect for the Muppets." So I was all resistant. So then Jerry Jewell and I read Christmas Carol, realized neither of us had just read the book right through. And Jerry particularly said, "This is the most fantastic book ever, and we have to do it." Then we went through some iterations in how to approach Christmas Carol, and then I'll move on to Treasure Island. But with Christmas Carol, for a little while, Miss Piggy was the Ghost of Christmas Present, Gonzo was the Ghost of Christmas Present, and we realized this is not right. And with Christmas Carol specifically, Dickens, the darkness of Dickens, that dark heaviness of Dickens coincides, cohabitates or something. It perfectly complements the Muppets. So we just grabbed a hold of the contrast between Dickens and Henson and just went ride it in every moment, in every scene. Ride, keep it polarized. Don't try to mix it. Just put it there always. So with Christmas Carol, it turned out to be a relatively simple formula. We made the most faithful adaptation of Christmas Carol ever made, which is wild, because Gonzo is actually doing the Dickens prose. You know, the prose is between the dialogue that Gonzo is saying in the movie is in the book. So our adaptation in the end turned out to be the most faithful ever, which is weird because it's a Muppet Christmas Carol. But it just turned out that all we had to do was make sure the Muppets could be the Muppets, make sure that when Kermit's playing Bob Cratchit, he's also Kermit, make sure that Robin is also Robin, even as he's playing Tiny Tim. And make sure that you know, Gonzo is also Gonzo, but Charles Dickens, and we just realized in every aspect of that movie, in the costuming, in the set design, in the dialogue, in the writing, in the shooting, in the lighting, it's always both. It's always very faithfully Dickens and very faithfully Muppets. So that was just a really wonderful formula that we hit on, where we're like, contrast, just keep contrasting it in every moment. Treasure Island was a little bit tougher because the base material is tougher than Christmas Carol, and Treasure Island is 3 movies in one, and of course we only had about the same money, just a little bit more, and tell the studio, wait a second, I've got a movie in England, then I've got a movie on a boat, then I've got a movie on an island, and you have to bring the toughest thing with Treasure Island. Well, going back to the material, Treasure Island, the pivotal moment, it's a coming-of-age story of Jim Hawkins, and the pivotal moment where he comes of age is when he shoots a man in the face and kills him, and the man slowly dies. Okay, that ain't going to be in our movie. So that was the trickiest part about Treasure Island, but the character of Long John Silver, and is he bad? He is bad, but is he unredeemable? Is he unredeemable? No, he's not unredeemable. Do you love him even as he's bad? Very, very interesting. The strength, I think, of Treasure Island and all productions of Treasure Island is the character of Long John Silver. It's just such a complex character. It's the character that you love, but he's always going to be a bad boy. You can't trust him. You just can't expect to trust him. He's the character that says, love me, don't trust me. Just for your own good, don't trust me. You know? So. And Tim Curry did a brilliant job with Long John Silver. The toughest thing about the movie was I had to carry enough characters so that at the end in the island, I could split them into 3 groups, because that's what the book calls for. And that was the hardest part about the movie, actually, was carrying that many characters. I had all these characters about all these characters. So Treasure Island, whereas Christmas Carol has a lot of intimate scenes that you could really pay attention to the details. It was like Treasure Island was like, God, another scene with 15 characters, and another scene with 15 characters. It was tough in that sense. I would say that Christmas Carol's probably a stronger story than Treasure Island. Treasure Island is probably stronger scene for scene, which is interesting. So on first viewing, I would say almost everybody would prefer Christmas Carol. On second viewing, most people will prefer Treasure Island, because once you're past the story, once you know the story, and now you're watching it scene for scene for scene, Treasure Island has some really wonderful stuff that I'm very proud of. Anyway, I just sort of rambled.
People who haven't asked.
Just a couple of real quick questions. I was sitting down with a local puppeteer before coming in here, and he does a local ministry with the puppets and anti-bullying in schools. And his name is Ron, and he just wanted to know how you select the contestants on Jim Henson's Creature Shop Challenge.
Well, we only did the one season, and then Sci-Fi cut all their budgets. I know, boom. And then they said, yeah, but you know that you've seen the quotes. It was the hardest thing yet they ever did was to cancel Creature Shop Challenge. I was like, yeah, a lot of good that does me. But the way we did it was we used the same casting group, but they're almost like a search group that does Face Off. So what happened was they're a very smart group. But what had happened was in 4 years of looking for special effects makeup artists, they had already come in contact with quite a lot of animatronic-y, creature-building people. So it made total sense to use them. And then they did do another search. They did a full posting. They did a posting all over the place, and it was a complex. I was amazed at what people were willing to do. It was a complex process, but they posted for everybody, and everybody could send in a resume. I can't even remember, a resume and I think a videotape of themselves building something, so that it was proof that they had built it, and a resume, and then they sent that in, and if they got through that, then we invited, I think, 60, probably. Gigi, do you remember? How many did we invite to LA? Probably about 60. About 60 artists came to, no, it's probably less than that, 40. We invited, from that section, we invited, I think, 40 to come, and actually they had one interim step in the middle. They had a second submission that they had to do to get to that. And then when they came, they worked in our creature shop with our creature shop supervisors, watched them work for 2 5-hour sessions. And then all those resumes were then brought to me and the network to choose who would go into it.
Thank you.
You touched on technology a little bit earlier. I'm wondering, now that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Labyrinth, looking back on some of those films and earlier in your career, are there any things that stand out that you wish you could do differently now as far as technology is concerned?
It's almost more the opposite. I wish there's things that I could still do now. That's actually the more painful, is, you know, when we had a fully operational creature shop with 80 staff and usually a payroll of 350, you know, when animatronics was in really full swing, and then, boy, you could just order stuff up. It was like, I need a 15-foot octopus tentacle, and it's got to move beautifully, and, you know, I'd have it a week later. Yeah, it's more and the materials, a lot of the materials we can't use anymore because they turn out to be poisonous. You know? And I think that happens with a lot of manufacturing now. You know, there's a lot of stuff we've learned we really shouldn't be using anymore, and so we've stopped. But are there things that I wish I could have done differently? Well, sure. I mean, in Labyrinth, Hoggle, we had not really gotten to the point yet where we could work with force feedback through the potentiometers to adjust the quality of movement of a motor, so which we then developed after that, so that a motor could move in an organic way like this, rather than, you know, with Hoggle, any organicness to the motor had to come from us in the performance, which was really hard. And then it had to be very carefully edited to hope to make it look as good as possible. But later we were able to make motors move in an organic way. That helped a lot. Today we would do hybrids. We would do, if we were doing Labyrinth again today, we would work with hybrid characters. It would be semi-animatronic. But with us it would be mostly animatronic. It's interesting. It was Where the Wild Things Are was a very interesting process, done in a very labor-intensive way, and if they had gone into it knowing the way they wanted to do it, we could have figured out a much less labor-intensive. But with that, they were using fully photorealistic heads, but no movement at all, to keep the heads light enough that they could work where it was 115 degrees, and they were in the jungle and didn't want things breaking down. And then in the hybrid sense of that one, they then created 3D faces digitally and then animated them. And then, after animating them, they put the skin back on. And the way they did it was not by doing a match of skin, but by using the photo, the actual photograph from the frame and sticking it back on. And the result was really extraordinary, because that really looks good. That really looks like animatronic puppets, even though those faces were not moving when they shot. Yeah.
I don't think there's a generation anywhere that has not known the Muppets, and that's pretty cool since they've come to be. And I think that that's got to be a very strange feeling for you, having seen this happen. And do you feel a sense of responsibility at all for all of a sudden kindling this imagination for all of these people, adults and children, through the process of
I
this?
think it's my dad who would.
Well, you've carried the torch too.
Yes,
Don't sell
absolutely.
yourself short, okay?
Well, I think that's a lovely thing to say that you said that, and I think it's wonderful that our work has impact. I think a lot of it is we were lucky, and my dad was lucky. Last night walking around looking at those costumes, 4 or 5 people there deserve it just as much almost. You know, they clearly have it too. They have it. They have that eye. And they have that creative ability, and I think, you know, artists just need to work. My dad was always very ambitious, and my mother would always say he always knew he was going to entertain the world or nothing. And he made 2 pilots of the Muppet Show. All networks passed twice. Who's ever done that? Who's ever done that? All networks passed, said Muppets are for kids. It's never going to work in prime time. So then my dad, I say no, a little bit petulantly, went and signed on to Saturday Night Live. Said, fine, you want me to just do kids? I'm doing Saturday Night Live. It's already controversially the most adult TV show ever made in history, and I'm signing on now before it even goes on air. So he did the first season of the of Saturday Night Live, waiting for somebody to give him the Muppet Show. And then the Muppet Show was, there was a lot of like, wow, it's really bringing the world together. It was the first show to sell in more than like 30 countries, and then it sold to like 120 or something like that. And everybody was like, wow, look at what the Muppet Show is doing. And it held that top slot for about 2 months. And then Dallas went. Like, we were all believing, yes, this is because of the Muppets and the positive message it's the world is embracing. And then Dallas became sold in more countries.
I think we have time for one more question, so Brian, do you want to choose?
Oh, no, that's too hard. Somebody who hasn't asked it,
Okay.
you haven't asked the question back, right? You didn't ask.
Alyssa.
No, you were raising your hand, and I don't think you've asked. Can I answer more? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to you.
You talked a little bit about the physicalness in some of the different movies. Are there hand or shoulder exercises you do to warm up beforehand? Before, you know?
Yes. Back when I was doing the heavy puppets that were hard, the Chinese balls, roll the 3 Chinese balls in your hands. That's great for the coordination, your control of your fingers. You know, you roll the 3 balls backwards and forwards. 2 balls. 3's hard. Some people can do it. I can't. 2 balls. I don't know. I never was doing 3. You do 2 balls back and forth. Get the pretty big ones. The bigger, the harder. And then fill tennis balls with pennies. Cut a slot in a tennis ball and fill it with pennies, and then juggle them. And that'll give you all your arm strength, but also coordination. Yeah.
There are so many aspects to what you do, from occasionally puppeteering to spearheading new projects for the company, attending events, judging shows, and you've given us so much insight today. Is there any idea, can you give us any idea of what the day-to-day of your career looks like?
Well, no, it's just so different. It's appallingly a lot of selling, and it's awful. I have to say, it is awful. It's pitching and trying to convince people and pitching, and that's just so that's the hard part. And it's true with not everybody, but most people in our industry, particularly if you're trying to do something different every time. You know, there was an easier career track for me and my company if we just kept emulating, you know, oh, that one was successful, let's do another one just like it, let's do another one just like it. We've just never done that. My dad never did that. He canceled the Muppet Show in season 5 because he was like, I'm done, I want to do something else. Yeah, it's often pretty boring. It's often going in and, well, Gigi's my assistant, and she actually dresses like that pretty much every day. She actually does. So people love coming to my office for meetings. And And you know, but it is a lot of, unfortunately, it's a lot of meetings. I wish it was always writing and drawing and storyboarding and shooting. I wish it was, but it's more of the time is spent having meetings, trying to get things financed, try to get the company, you know. And then when you get to shoot, it's really nice. And then a shooting day for me, I learned a long time ago to go to sleep. And oh well, I guess I'm doing a director's panel. That's what I'm going to tell people: go to sleep. That's the real trick is you wrap, go home, go to sleep, even though you're not prepared for the next day. I go to work 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours before crew call, and then that works perfectly. You go to work at 4:45 in the morning, and you recheck all of your plans for the day. You retype them all. You rework it. Your brain's working great, and then by the time people come in and they're ready to start shooting, you've already done it twice in your head, and I love production. It's very tiring, but it's definitely my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about your father's legacy. You're obviously very respectful of that, but also how he, you know, wanted to do something controversial because they wouldn't take the Muppets. Talk a little bit, if you could, about the Happy Time murders and the process of that.
Meetings. Well, I can say for 5 years I've had what is pretty much acknowledged in the entire industry as the funniest script they've ever read, and pretty much everybody agrees. And it was hard to set it up because everybody wanted it to be. There's no comps because the industry is run by comps. The accounting department has to say this film is these 4 films, which we're going to average their box office. That's going to indicate what we can spend on it. That's also going to indicate how we're going to market it and how much we have to spend marketing it. Without comps, the industry goes freezes up. So our film was impossible to comp, and therefore it falls into the independent model, which means it must be produced for less than $10 million. So for years, everybody's been trying to get me to make it for less than $10 million, and as innovative as I think I am, I cannot make that movie for under $10 million. So, but now I am at SDX Studios, and they do believe in it, and they are not trying to crush the budget, but they're very picky about who will be the cast. So I'm basically still working on casting the movie. So I'm not slated for production yet, but I do have a studio behind. It's a fantastic script, and it's kind of ready to go. But I'm not making it yet.
Now we definitely have time for just one more.
Looking back at the Save Farscape campaign that kicked off after the last cancellation, do you think if crowdsourcing like Kickstarter and all the other crowdsourcing websites had been around at the time, we might have seen a potential full season?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe. It pretty much was that, because that huge Save Farscape campaign made it around the world and brought financing in. I didn't bring the financing. The financing came to me. I was getting calls, internationally, calls saying, let us help you finance Farscape. So it was such an unusual model that it couldn't be open-ended. Like a TV series has to be open-ended. If you're doing this season, it's because you know how you would do the next season. And with that kind of approach, I knew I had to have a closed-ended thing. And so we just decided with the amount of money that people were talking about that a 4-hour miniseries was just about what we could do. And then that's what we did. But you know what? I can't imagine. I think the Save Farscape campaign basically did what crowdfunding does today. Crowdfunding, I guess, will get a little bit deeper, but there was so much money involved. I don't know, and I don't even know. Frankly, I don't know. I haven't quite figured out how crowdfunding can work in a way that I'll feel comfortable with it. You know, if somebody sends me, if 10,000 people send me $10 million, and then I make something with that $10 million. and it's successful, and now I start making money. Now I feel bad. Now I feel guilty. So it's like now I want to send the money back to all those 10,000 people. So, so I haven't quite figured out how I would use crowdfunding, but unless it was literally a non-profit production within the company. And right now, like any company, we have to make money wherever we can. Low margin business, particularly worldwide piracy, is killing us, just like it's killing everybody. We would literally make 4 times the money that we would make if only there was some clamp down on the worldwide piracy that's going on. But we kind of have to run as a commercial company. So, but if things got a lot better, or we were particularly frothy one year maybe, and we did crowdfunding, I would do crowdfunding for a not-for-profit production where all profits go somewhere, and then I would feel like I would.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.